think my community, the Somali community, really needs to be honest, and we need to talk about fraud and who's committing it, even if it's our own members. First of all, fraud is fraud. It's really bad. It hurts everybody. It especially hurts the most vulnerable. Our community, my community, Somali community, needs to have a good leader. You know, a leader that's a pretty good example, that promotes the ideas of America, that does not promote hate.
We are back talking about the Minnesota fraud situation. Obviously, you already know this, but I've been covering the Minnesota fraud situation for a while now. The Feeding Our Future scam, the daycare fraud, all of it. And today I came across this interview with this man. This is a Somali American author who literally got his book event shut down for speaking out against fraud in his own community. This man has been getting death threats. His mother had to move because the people are coming after her, all because he said, you know what, hey, maybe we shouldn't be committing fraud. That's insane.
This was August 2014. So I spoke English already, learned from American movies, right? When I went to my community, my Somali community, the first two things I was told was to sign up for a low-income housing, right? Section 8, to sign up for all of these benefits. But to do that, I have to connect with a local organization. So it's already a trap that I see. Someone is already waiting at the airport.
So we're gonna watch this interview together and kind of just see how difficult it is to be critical of your own community, especially in the Somali community. That's why you see so many people be so aggressive. Anyone comes around to even ask any questions, you see the extent of this aggressiveness when you listen to this man speak. Let's get into it.
A Somali American speaking out against fraud and facing threats from his own community. The consequences of telling the truth instead of taking sides. Next. Abdi Noor is a Somali American, a naturalized U.S. citizen. He's also the author of a memoir titled Call Me American. You know, it is beyond obvious now that fraud has been plaguing Minnesota. You've been an important voice in all this. Well, there's more to be said, I know, about how elected officials and state agencies may be accountable. Many of those who have been charged and convicted are Somali. In fact, 90% of those who have been federally charged in fraud-related cases are Somali, according to court records. What has been your reaction to all of this attention, that this is happening now, and also knowing that it's been going on for so long?
I have been speaking about these issues, fraud as well as corruption, for a while. I mean, I understand now it's every American is aware of it because the news is talking about it. But here's what I think. I think my community, the Somali community, really needs to be honest, and we need to talk about fraud and who's committing it, even if it's our own members. First of all, fraud is fraud. It's really bad. It hurts everybody. It especially hurts the most vulnerable. So it hurts my community as well, the Somali community, right?
So you can see right here, Abdi said something that I think I've been trying to say for months. Many people have been talking about this for months. Fraud is fraud, and it hurts the most vulnerable people. 90% of those federally charged in the Minnesota fraud cases are from the same community, the Somali community. This is according to court records. No one's making this up. This is not people being racist. This is not someone trying to stereotype anyone. This is literally what the court documents are saying. And when someone from that community stands up and say, hey, we need to talk about this, honestly, he's going to get attacked for it, unfortunately. Think about that. He's not saying that all the people are committing fraud. He's saying that there's too many of them, right? He's saying that people who committing the fraud need to be held accountable, regardless of their background. And somehow that's a controversial take. That's why there's so many issues happening right now in Minnesota. It's basically complete mayhem over there. People are storming into churches. There's shootings. There's riots. There's issues every single day. It's too cold to be outside with this nonsense. He says it hurts our own vulnerable communities because the money that is being stolen could have went to fix roads. It could have built better schools. It could help people who actually need it. Instead, it's lying in the pockets of a few fraudsters who are hiding behind their community as a shield. Notice this too. You haven't seen a lot of Somalis out there protesting. Have you? I've been checking out some of the protest footage and the riots and the fights. I haven't seen anyone that's been saying, hey, I'm Somali and I'm out here fighting for my people. They're chilling. They're in the back while everyone else is crashing out.
It doesn't give us any advantage. If we speak up against it and really become so honest about it, then that's an advantage because our community needs to work hard. Our community, my community, Somali community, needs to have a good leader, you know, a leader that's a pretty good example, that promotes the ideas of America, that does not promote hate. And I also expect the Democratic leader to come to that conclusion, to really understand that if they're defending fraud, if they're not speaking about it, it's hurting our own vulnerable communities. So that's what I see. But most of the people are, it's just become political. But I do not think it is political.
I agree. Fraud is fraud, again, as we say. And he is going after some of the leaders, Democrat leaders, that are so focused on getting votes that they don't want to say anything that piss off that voting bloc. And he's talking about Ilhan Omar, especially. She has been profiting, looks like, it still could be alleged, but how someone comes in as a congresswoman and just by a few years generates tens of millions of dollars. Now, again, this is all alleged, but how? All of a sudden gets to $30 million in just a few years. That's not how it works. So he's calling out these Democratic leaders, saying that they're going to defend fraud or stay silent on it. They're part of the problem. This takes a lot of guts because, especially in Minnesota, where the political climate is where it is right now. So this man is just asking for basic accountability and honesty. And for that, obviously, his community tried to shut him down.
Now, Abdi, you've been censored and seriously threatened for speaking out. In fact, I know you were scheduled for a book event in Minneapolis not too long ago. What happened there?
Members of my community in Minnesota, and specifically those so-called leaders, got angry and upset that they had stormed into the place of my book talk, that it eventually ended up shutting it down just because there's only one thing I did, and it was speaking up against fraud in my community. It was hard, it was difficult dealing with it, but I realized it's even harder. I mean, if you're not admitting, if you're really attacking the person who is telling you fraud is bad, stand back, work hard, right? That's basically my narrative. And if that gets me attacked, and that shuts down my book talks, then, instead of getting angry, I thought I was actually doing the right thing. And I didn't shut up there. I went ahead and talked more. And up until now, I still keep talking about fraud. I'm using my platform to encourage the community to say no to fraud, to say no to the culture that promotes fraud, to say no to any political affiliation that is silent on fraud.
So that's really important when he said the culture. There's something going on in that community, and it's issues with so many communities. I even say this in Black communities, right? As me speaking as a Black person, there's some elements of our culture that is not healthy. Things like having a very strong family structure, or not to fall into this I'm a victim mentality. Like there's certain things that we have issues in our own culture. So this situation with the Somalis, it seems like, again, it's all alleged, but we've seen a lot of videos, you've seen a lot of stuff that's been going on for over 10 years in Minnesota. It seems like they are okay with scamming. Like fraud is something that is embedded in the culture where they think they are entitled to this money, despite the fact when you go into a daycare and 5 men jump out and there's no children, there's no evidence of children, they just expect to get paid. They expect the taxpayers just to give them money. I mean, that's basically what's going on.
Pretty much what I'm doing. And it seems like that when they couldn't do anything to me physically, my mother has been threatened in Somalia, that she ended up moving from one place to another place. And she's just nothing to do with this. It's just me, Somali American, naturalized United States citizen who loves this country, by the way, who loves hot dog, who loves all kinds of flavors of American ice cream. And to me, that's just a joy. And that itself has angered some Somali Americans. And I don't know why. And I think we should really get to the point where you would let someone love America if they want to love America. If you're attacking them for that and saying, oh, you're with the conservatives, it's like, hey, wait a minute. I never said that. But we should not be put in a box that we are anti-American, or that there are others who I consider myself as a patriotic Somali American. I'm going to fight to be here, to be.
That is crazy when you really think about it. I mean, he's not even necessarily saying that he is a conservative. He says he's patriotic. He enjoys being here. I mean, he chose to be here. But it's crazy. He had a book scheduled and members of his own community stormed the venue and shut it down. Not because he was lying, not because he was making anything up, because he had the audacity to say fraud is bad and we shouldn't do it. That's why I talk about the culture situation. And when they couldn't physically get to him, they went after his own mother in Somalia, a woman that has nothing to do with any of this. She had to move because people are threatening her. That's not activism. That's not even community protection. That's intimidation. That is mob tactics. That is trying to protect the bag. We are making too much money. You are talking too much, and we're going to find any way to shut you down. And the interesting thing that Abdi said, instead of getting angry, he thought that he was actually doing the right thing, but he didn't shut up and he kept going ahead and talking more. And that takes a lot of courage. That's what it looks like when someone actually cares about the community enough to tell them the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, the truth may hurt. It's important because right now there's so many eyes on the Somali community and in general with fraud. Everyone is a little sensitive now. People are looking into everything. People are calling. People are doing their own investigations, their own research. They're showing up at the door. And if you have a daycare and there's 0 kids there, someone's going to figure this out and someone's going to find out. And when they find out, the authorities will show up. It's cool that he loves America. He loves to be a naturalized citizen. He's proud to be here. And for some reason, people are angry at him for that. It shouldn't matter that he loves to be here or not. Whether you want to be here or not, don't commit fraud. Don't commit crimes. Instead of trying to call him a conservative and try to put him in his political box because he wants to be patriotic. I mean, we've seen this playbook before. When you can't attack the message, you attack the messenger. You try to discredit them. You try to make it seem like they're betraying their own community or selling out. But what he's doing is telling the truth. The receipts are in the court documents. Fraud happened and it's still happening. And the fact that loving America is somehow seen as betrayal in parts of this community tells you everything you need to know about what's really happening here and what they really value. But real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. I've been covering this situation for months now, and obviously I'm not stopping. We're going to be continuing to bring more information every single video, but let's get back into it.
You know, we have seen some of the panic and hostility for ourselves. The police were called when Alpha News went to investigate daycare and autism centers. We received legal threats. We've also seen that same kind of hostility in those viral videos from Nick Shirley. Federal officials who recently visited the Twin Cities also reported much of the same happening to them. What do you make of this hostility on the streets now, this strange behavior at these facilities? What does that really say about what's going on here?
You know, what I see now, it's a cover-up, basically, creating this hostile environment, taking attention from the real issue, which is fraud, again, that has not only hurt the American taxpayer, but also the most vulnerable who are, you know, if you look at most of these fraud, they are claiming to serve children. Somali children or other minority children, and they're not doing that. A lot of people have been charged for that. Why can't we talk about that instead of creating hostile environment and continuing this problem, which does not do any good because a lot of money is being lost?
Really good point. That's exactly what we've been saying. It is a cover-up. And it takes a lot of strength for him to actually admit that. You notice that when people are trying to investigate any of these daycare and autism centers in Minnesota, police are getting called, there's legal threats, hostility in the streets. When you have a legit business, you don't have to really worry about someone bothering you. You want more business. You want people to show up to say, hey, I have a daycare. If you have a child, come on in. But you don't see that. It's legal threats, it's hostility on the streets, and federal officials visiting the Twin Cities are reporting the same thing. People are creating chaos and confusion to avoid accountability. So he just broke it down very simply. These fraud schemes are supposed to be serving children, and they're not. The money is being stolen, the services are not being provided, and the people who get hurt are the actual vulnerable kids who need these programs. They want to make it this battle between immigrants and Americans. But it isn't. It is not about immigrants versus Americans. This isn't about the Somali people versus white people. This is about criminals stealing from taxpayers and from the communities they claim to represent, they claim to have some level of loyalty to. A lot of money that's being lost could have went to those communities, his communities. It could have been there to rebuild things. That's the problem. This is where the issue is lying. So everyone's going back and forth and fighting with ICE. The Minnesota's real problem is that they're going to need real funding. When you have issues with infrastructure, we have problems with your schools. Families need support. and millions, probably billions of dollars are just being disappeared into fraudulent schemes while politicians and so-called community leaders run interference. So you see how they act so hostile is not a random situation. It's a plan. It's strategic. It's meant to scare away journalists, scare away anyone who wants to investigate, scare away anyone asking real questions.
That money could have been going into our communities, different communities, not only necessarily the immigrant community, but every community. It could rebuild our roads. It could be building better schools. And that's what we need. So it personally hurts me to see this so much. It just personally makes me feel, cringe and just, I really hope Americans rise up and understand what's going on.
Along with the strange encounters, the facts and figures tell another side of the story. A recent report found that nearly 90% of Somali households with children in Minnesota receive welfare. 73% have at least one member of the household on Medicaid. What's the significance here? What do those numbers mean to you, Abdi?
When I first arrived in the United States, by the way, for those watching, this was August 2014. So I spoke English already, learned from American movies, right? When I went to my community, my Somali community, the first two things I was told was to sign up for low-income housing, right? Section 8, to sign up for all of these benefits. But to do that, I have to connect with a local organization. So it's already a trap that I see someone is already waiting at the airport. Someone knows that you're arriving. There are all these NGOs that really want to use you. And I revolted. I said, I'm not here for that. I do not want to sit in someone's nonprofit, wait for them to serve, to help me with, I'm not disabled. I have never been. So I want to work. And I have seen a lot of my community members in this bubble, drinking tea all day long, all these little Somali stores or restaurants getting crowded. And I kept saying, you guys not going to work, right? It's a lot of young men in their 20s and their 30s. And so I immediately started speaking up, saying, you really guys need to get to work, and if you look at it, all these NGOs or nonprofits or, Medicaid agencies that are in Minnesota, this is what they thrive on. They look at those who are arriving, so-called refugees. And I do not think the so-called community leaders aren't doing enough to really do what is proper, which is send the kids to school, send the teenagers to work, do not, and don't just hold them in this cultural thing and make them fear that assimilating into America is such a scary thing. It is not.
So you can see this is a racket from the time that he arrived to the US in 2014. A lot of this happened about 10 years ago. The first thing his community told him to do was to sign up for low-income housing, sign up for the benefits, connect with a local organization. People are literally waiting at the airport. These NGOs are ready to plug him into the system. He says, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not disabled. I want to work. But when you look at the numbers, nearly 90% of Somali households with children in Minnesota receive welfare. 73% has at least one member in Medicaid. Those are official reports. What Abdi is saying is there's a system in place to keep people dependent. NGOs and nonprofits that will thrive on keeping refugees in this bubble. Community leaders who make people fear assimilation, who tells them that blending into American culture is scary or wrong, keeps the money flowing. It's kind of similar to what's going on in other poor communities. Keep them hooked on welfare. Keep them hooked so they can always make sure they get their vote. Why would community leaders want to keep people dependent and afraid? Always follow the money. These organizations get funded based on the number of people that they serve. The more people in the system, the more money flows. It's their financial interest to keep people on welfare, keep them disconnected from the mainstream American life, keep them reliant on these organizations. He broke free. This man worked hard. He got his stuff together. He's obviously wrote a book. I think he actually has a master's degree. He assimilated while keeping his identity as a Somali person. And what happened? His own community turned on him.
I have really benefited a lot from blending and assimilating into American culture. I've lived here for 12 years. I have a master's degree. I went on, I worked hard, I wrote a book, and I just keep going. And I think that is what everyone could do in the United States. I could not do those. I could not write a book if I was still in Somalia. I could not get my master's degree if I was still in Somalia. And now I do. And that's what America provides if you look for it.
There's another part to all of this. It's kind of hard to ignore how this isn't a coordinated nation-building effort. We had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently visit Minnesota as well. He announced some drastic changes to money transfers from the U.S. Do you think there's any truth to all of this, given the amount of money that's been leaving Minnesota and even the country, for that matter?
Yeah, I think there is. I'll give you one example. If a Somali person in Minneapolis wants to send money back to Somalia, I think the maximum amount that you could send in one day is $1,000, right? What do they ask you? They ask for a driver's license and a social security number one time, right? And they put you in the data. But the person who's collecting this money back in Somalia, nobody knows who they are because Somalia doesn't have any properly issued IDs or passports or like people right there do not have any documents. So it could be an Al-Shabaab, who is a pretty radical group. It could be an ISIS person collecting the money over there. It could be a nice woman, mother, aunt. You never know. So that is why I'm actually kind of suspicious. If you go to a local Somali mosque in Minneapolis, and there's a few of them right now, a lot of them talk about Somali politics, the cultural and religious oppression of things like that. So it's the same views as the radical groups back in Somalia. And so those people have sent money back home. Who are they sending it to? We know where Al-Shabaab's stronghold is. It's pretty much everywhere in Somalia at the moment, right? And so nobody knows who's collecting the money, but someone knows who is sending the money. And I think if any of the federal government is watching this, I really hope that they start putting up a system thoroughly that sort of investigates who you are sending this money to, and just find a way to do that. And a lot of people probably will get busted, I guess.
So he sees how he's basically explained the very serious nature of what's going on, how the money is being transferred from Minneapolis to Somalia. You can send up to $1,000 a day. They'll ask for your driver's license, your social security number once. They'll put you in a database, and that's it. So the problem is the person collecting the money in Somalia, no one knows who they are. Somalia doesn't have the proper issue IDs or documentation. So who's collecting the money? Could it be a really nice person, or could it be a terrorist? It could be ISIS. Nobody knows. So when you go to the local Somali mosque in Minneapolis, a lot of them talking about Somali politics, the culture, what's going on over there, and the same views as the radical groups back in Somalia. People are sending money back home, potentially, to these strongholds, and there's no system to track who's receiving the money. This is outrageous. This isn't just about the welfare fraud or the daycare scams anymore. This is about potentially terrorism financing, all from the people of Minnesota paying their taxes. This is where their money is allegedly going to. So this man Abdi is risking everything to tell the truth. With his book events getting shut down, his mother being threatened, his own community calling him a traitor. And really for what? For saying that fraud is wrong, for saying that we should assimilate while still keeping an identity, for saying that America gave him opportunities that he couldn't have, for saying America gave him opportunities he never could have had in Somalia. That's what courage looks like. Not the fake social media activism that we see every single day, or people crashing out in front of cop cars. Not that performative outrage. Real courage, standing up for what's right even when your own community turns against you. Covering this Minnesota fraud situation, this interview connected a lot of dots for me. The welfare dependency, the culture situation, the ecosystem that these NGOs put on these people, and the hostile environment that is designed to stop any kind of investigation. The potential terrorism financing. It's all connecting, and it all kind of makes sense right now. So again, the people who suffer the most are the people who are vulnerable, people in the communities who actually need this help. They need the real services. They need these real opportunities. Instead, they're trapped in a system that benefits the scammers and the so-called leaders while keeping them dependent and afraid. So Abdi's book is called Call Me American. You can find it on Amazon. I will put the link in the description box below if you want to support. But for us, we're going to keep digging. We're going to keep trying to bring those receipts. We're going to keep trying to bring the truth out there. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next video.